I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the university and IMTFI to this, our 6th annual conference for the funded researchers that we support through the Institute for Money, Technology, and Financial Inclusion. Now, as I said, this is our 6th year, and IMTFI, for those of you who don't know, has a rather unique model and a rather unique mission in the world of financial inclusion and poverty alleviation. We began in 2008, just as the whole mobile money phenomenon was starting to take off with Safaricom's M-Pesa in Kenya and with GCash and Smart in the Philippines. We were in conversation with the Gates Foundation about some of their prospective initiatives in the mobile money space. And we realized that one thing that was needed was a sort of neutral academic perspective on what was taking place as mobile money deployments were popping up here and there in the developing world, and as people were starting to imagine that mobile phone-enabled financial services could become a kind of on-ramp to formal financial inclusion and would bring all the benefits that digital payment platforms have to offer, especially for the world's poor. This began as a kind of hypothesis, right? The hypothesis was digital payment platforms are going to have all kinds of positive externalities, especially for the poor who live in a cash-only existence. Cash is very vulnerable. Cash can be easily stolen. It can be lost. It can be, as we've learned from some of our prior researchers here at IMTFI, it can be eaten by vermin and by elephants. I'm not kidding. And it can be sort of lost in transport. It can be stolen in transport. There's a whole number of risks that it poses. At the same time, cash is a kind of public infrastructure. It's a state-supported means of value transfer. It's something that settles at par. When I give you cash, you get that amount of cash, right? There's no fees, there's no tolls along the way. So we began thinking at IMTFI, how are we going to get our arms around this phenomenon of mobile payment and digital payment as it's being rolled out in the developing world, and also encountering so many traditional and customary practices around money that had developed as people tried to solve for themselves some of the problems around dealing exclusively in cash. That's how we started. Now, we had a couple of other kind of crazy ideas along the way, and we've seen them kind of institutionalized and blossom over the years. The first was that we felt that there was the risk of a lack of voices and perspectives from the global south. We were concerned that a lot of the discussion around financial inclusion, and particularly around technological platforms for financial inclusion, because of the high-tech nature of some of them, because of the kind of Silicon Valley, global north kind of place some of them were coming from, we were concerned that the voices of those who would be most impacted by these new developments would be left out. And so we thought first, let's see if we can create a community of inquiry around mobile and digital payment that is based in the developing world. Let's see if we can kind of scare up, beat the bushes to find a cadre of researchers from the countries where these new services were being deployed who would be primed to start thinking about the collision between traditional practices and informal practices in their countries and some of these new technological services and platforms. So the first thing we wanted to do was to locate developing world researchers. This is harder than it might sound, right? We are very interested in IMTFI in things like, you know, the doubly and triply marginalized, in people in very remote areas, and in how they can be brought into the formal financial sector for the various benefits that it affords. That means that we've tried to find, you know, not just people in urban centers, say Delhi or Manila, but also people who are able to work in some of the remotest regions of the world who can help us learn from the perspectives of people in those areas. A slight footnote, just you'll notice today, given our effort to bring in people who are working in remote regions, some of them didn't make it. We'll punt. We have some of their presentations. One was able to record his presentation, which we'll play. We have another researcher who was stuck in the typhoon who made it, I think, to California, but won't be able to present this morning, so someone else will be presenting for her. But that, in a way, exemplifies one of the reasons why we felt it was so important to get people from these remote places, as well as from the urban centers that I think people have been hearing from a bit. The next thing we wanted to do is, when you're starting up a research institute, it's really easy to fall into a couple of traps. The first trap is to think that you give grants to people, they go do their research, and at the end of it, they write you a report, and then that's what you've got. Right? There's a risk in that. The report could stink. Not that that's going to happen in any case here. The work, maybe you could have had a moment where in mid-course there could have been some course corrections or some feedback or some input that would have really shaped the project so that it would really be kicked up to the next level. So the next part of our model here at IMTFI, the second part after trying to find researchers in the developing world, is basically this conference. The conference comes in the middle of everybody's projects. And for those of you who are not researchers but are kind of visiting and listening in on what's going on, it's very important to realize that what you're going to be hearing are works in progress. Most of the researchers in the room are somewhere in the middle of their projects. Some are just getting started. There are a few who are close to finishing up, but really not quite. This is an opportunity for them to share what they've done so far, to get feedback from each other and from us and from the other folks in the audience, and then to go back, right, with the insights and learnings and methodological tools that we'll be talking about throughout the conference, both formally and in the corridor talk, to go back and then produce a much better project. This has been unbelievably successful for us. And it's had a couple of other effects that we didn't anticipate as well. One of the virtues of bringing all of you together is you all get to know each other, right? And you all start networking with each other, and you all start sharing with each other even after you go home. We have a number of tools to help you stay in touch, which we'll talk about at the end of the conference. Some of you already know about them. We have a number of ways to help you also gain access to some of the latest research in the areas that you're working in. But really, we have just been delighted by the effect of bringing people here midstream, getting you all to meet each other, then sending you back out again, because the results have really just been phenomenal. The next thing is that, the other risk in setting up a research institute is people go back, they do their research, they write up their report, and no, I don't want to make that much of a dig against, academia and the great university, but they write a peer-reviewed journal article that gets published in a journal that nobody ever reads. Right? Now, there are all kinds of benefits to that kind of publication, and we do provide a lot of support to the researchers to help you publish your work in whatever venues are appropriate for your own career. But we also spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we can translate some of the learnings that are taking place in this work and get it out into the policy community, get it out to the international organizations and philanthropic organizations that are involved in financial inclusion and digital payment, get it before governments, get it in front of the design community, get it in the hands of the people who are trying to devise new services and platforms so that the experiences and insights of people from the global south can help shape those agendas. I'm very pleased to report, and you can see on our website, that a great number of our researchers have now, at this point, done both. Published an academic article or even an academic book, and we've had something like 7 or 8 books come out of IMTFI research so far, but also given a report before the Reserve Bank of India, or in a case that's here in the room, given a presentation on the work to the UN, to UNCTAD, in addition to doing some academic work. So we're trying through IMTFI to cultivate a kind of brain trust that's primed and ready to be thinking about the impact of some of these new technologies on poverty alleviation in the developing world, and doing it with the perspectives of the developing world in mind, while also trying to reach as many diverse constituencies as we can so the work can really have impact. Again, just to remind you, what you'll be hearing are works in progress. I hope that everyone can kind of approach each other with a kind of generosity of spirit and intellect, and help each other along the way as you hear some of what they've been doing. So, just a couple of logistical matters. If you ever need any help or assistance with anything, find the people who have name tags with little ribbons on them. Our graduate assistants, maybe you guys can like wave your hands for a second. There are a couple of them are here, some of them are outside. They're there to help you. I don't know where the restrooms are, but they can tell you where they are. They're like out there somewhere. We are fully aware that everybody here is on a different time zone. So if you need to sort of step out for a bit, that's totally fine. Just don't get lost. As I said, because of some of the issues with people getting here, because of the typhoon and other matters, we're going to mix the order of the first panel. So that the first paper will be When the Dead Decide, followed by the Philippines paper, and then at the end of it will be Sibel Kusimba's paper on coming of age in Western Kenya. So we're going to be doing a little bit of jiggling of the order of things throughout the day because of the problems that we've had in getting some people here. All right. Without any further ado then, let me invite the first panel to come up. I'd like to introduce Funmi Arewa, who is going to be the moderator for this panel. She's a professor of law and anthropology here at the University of California at Irvine. She's on the Institute's board, and her research centers around intellectual property and business with a focus on copyright and music. She will be joined by our first batch of people here, the ones who are present anyway, Francis Santuna, and Martin, if you could come up, and also Sibel, if you could come up, that would be fantastic. Great, thank you very much.